Planning on feeding your family trash? That awful-looking meal, I've thrown it all away. Hey, are you even listening? I've spilled it all over the floor. The vulgar laughter of Susan came from the smartphone. All 30 portions, ruined. Just thinking about the cleanup makes me sigh. Jake seems to be right next to her, laughing loudly with his mother. Hurry up and buy some meat. And booze too. Susan quickly adds. Susan's demand for me to buy as many snacks and sweets as possible. It's like I'm some kind of servant. I was taken advantage of because of my desire for my son's happiness. But this incident is going to change things significantly. Susan's reign is over. When asked where I am, I told her the truth. What? I'm out shopping right now? What? For what reason am I out shopping? Obviously, to remake the ruined meal. I knew what Susan and the others had done without needing to be contacted. My name is Sally Johnson. 68 years old. I work part-time in a nursing care facility. Before this, I worked at the restaurant my husband owned. It wasn't very busy, but it was a lovely shop loved by the locals. But that place is gone now. My husband died in a car accident. It's been about 10 years since that painful goodbye. There hasn't been much joy in my life since then. There is someone who adds insult to my unfortunate life. Susan, my son Dave's wife. They got married 11 years ago. 1 year before my husband passed away. Looking back, that was probably the peak of my happiness. Susan is strong-willed and neurotic, thinking she's smarter than anyone else. Moreover, everything she does is incredibly rough. She always slams doors and cabinets, making a big noise to intimidate those around her, making my heart race. Honestly, I've felt incompatible with her since she came to visit to announce their engagement. Dave has his clueless moments, you know. I'm always there to support him. Indeed, my Dave has always been a bit unreliable since he was young. He was teased by his 2 younger siblings every day. But he was also incredibly kind and generous, always thinking of the family. If Dave chose her. My late husband and I accepted their marriage with that in mind. Even if she calls my beloved son clueless, I could bear it, thinking of his happiness. Susan, strong-willed and shrewd, sometimes does quite bold things. Every year, during the holiday season, I am painfully reminded of this. Regrettably, Susan rarely comes back home with Dave for a visit. This year, too, something came up last minute. I'll come later, she says, trying to minimize her time at our house. It has become a tradition for Dave to return home first during the holiday season. If she doesn't want to come, she should just say so honestly. I can't help but think that every time, as she deliberately makes up excuses and acts accordingly. It's like she has thick skin or something. Even after my grandson Jake was born, I had quite an unpleasant time because of Susan. Jake was born at the end of April. There was no word from Dave, and since Jake was just born, I optimistically thought maybe we would postpone the visiting. I didn't bother to confirm it specifically. Huh? Didn't we tell you? Maybe you just forgot? Susan's insincere excuse. It's impossible that I would forget such an important thing, since I always make sure to take notes. On the celebration day, Susan's parents also came and gave presents to Jake. I was completely left out. It was infuriating to think that I was deliberately excluded. Thus, about 11 years of continuing this unpleasant rivalry with a mean daughter-in-law. Early last year, there was an incident where Susan exploded like never before. It all started when Dave decided to quit his job at the insurance agency to open a restaurant, saying he has been secretly aspiring to be a chef, unable to forget the taste of his father's cooking and the sight of him working. I want to run a restaurant, even if it's small. I just can't give up my dream. Susan, of course, was vehemently against it and lashed out at him furiously. Don't decide on your own, she screamed at him. You're really stupid. What are you thinking? You don't even know if it'll be profitable. I understand the feeling of wanting to stop your partner's reckless challenges. Men sometimes want to test themselves with such foolish challenges. When my husband started his restaurant, it was the same. Initially, I opposed it. But I never called him stupid like Susan did to Dave. She really is harsh with her words. She speaks without considering how the other person might feel. Eventually, Dave quit his job and began preparing to realize his dream, almost in rebellion against Susan. Then, Susan, becoming defiant, started to openly show her irritation and anger towards Dave and me. After Dave had been attending culinary school for over 6 months, Susan began contacting me directly on my smartphone, always asking for money. Since Dave's income was zero, life was hard, she said. Because of Jake's selfishness, everyday budgeting is tough. Please help us. Even if my daughter-in-law begs for money, I wasn't surprised. It's natural to feel financially insecure in such situations. Even my husband's restaurant didn't make much money at first. Moreover, Dave hasn't even opened his restaurant yet. It's still in the starting phase. As a mother, I feel guilty about my son's behavior and want to help as much as I can. But I'm sure Jake didn't decide to pursue a career as a chef without any thought. I heard he had saved enough for the tuition fees of the culinary school and living expenses while attending school. And Susan herself, as I heard, works part-time at a friend's company. If they're still short on money, maybe it's just her poor budgeting? When I suggested something to that effect, Susan became defensive and snapped back. I'm trying hard, but it's not enough. That's why I'm asking for help. She raised her voice as if demanding that I should understand such things immediately. Apparently, the costs for Jake's tutoring and extracurricular activities are quite high. If that's the case, it can't be helped. But it's important, so I need to discuss it with Dave as well. All right, I'll talk to Dave about it. You better not do that. Because, you know what? If Dave, with his wounded pride, refuses the help, then that's the end of it. Indeed, that's a possibility. Reluctantly, it seems I have no choice but to comply with Susan. In this way, a part of my already small income ended up in my daughter-in-law's pocket. Generally, grandparents find their grandchildren adorable. And they don't mind a bit of expense for them. How I wish I could feel that way. Unfortunately, I couldn't find my grandson adorable at all. Limited to Jake, I even felt hatred. I don't know what Susan has been indoctrinating him with, but Jake regards me as an enemy. For example, during his visits, he would secretly call me "Hey Granny" behind Dave's back. Hey Granny, let me have meat. Dinner should be barbecue. That's final. Got it? No matter how boisterous an 11-year-old may be, such language should not be tolerated. What does he think of me, his grandmother? There's no respect for the elderly at all. Every time Jake spoke rudely to me, I caught him and lectured that this is not how to behave. Manners are necessary even among close family members. You shouldn't call your grandmother "Hey Granny." If you speak rudely, people will dislike you, you know? Do you want to end up with no friends? I even tried to scare him with that. But Jake was completely unaffected. Instead, "Shut up, Granny." He got more defiant. Hate me? So what? All the kids in my class do what I say anyway. It seems Jake has quite an influence at school too. Furthermore, his aggressive behavior extends to chasing around Max, my cat. Because of this, whenever Dave's family comes to visit, Max always disappears. Jake's unpleasant and two-faced nature is very much like Susan's. Like a mother, like a son. It's disheartening to think this is my own grandson. In early December this year, a decisive rift developed between Susan and me. The cause, once again, was money. I was surprised by a sudden call during the day. About the monthly money, can you increase it from $1,000 to $2,000? What? Why? It's for Jake, to enroll him in a better tutoring school. It would be pitiful if he fell behind his friends, right? Susan, I'm sorry, but $2,000 a month is just too much for me. While I could make the payment, doing so would leave me unable to live. Then Susan immediately raised her voice and began to berate me, calling me insincere. Whose son is the reason for all this mess? It's your son, right? It felt like a line had been crossed. Her rough language made that very clear. Susan has stopped showing even the minimum respect towards me. If you need money, borrow it. You have plenty of relatives. Do that much. Indeed, I have many relatives. My late husband had many siblings, about 30 people would gather. But I've never asked my relatives for money, nor have they asked me. Even if shouted at or threatened, I couldn't provide the $2,000. I stood my ground until the end. Then she said, "Fine. Whatever happens, I don't care." And the call ended there. I had only stated what was impossible. Why should I face such backlash for that? The unfairness was too much. I could never have predicted what Susan would do at the end of that year. As usual, only Dave came back home first for the holidays. Since that phone call, there had been no exchange between Susan and me. When I asked Dave, he said Susan seemed normal as always. It seems he still kept our conversation from her, as usual. That means she would probably arrive at our house a day later, as she does every year. I didn't mind. I would just act as I normally do. What else could I do? The incident occurred the day after Dave arrived. Both Dave and I had errands and greetings to attend to, so we were out. It seems that Susan had somehow gotten the house keys from Dave for the visit. Sitting at the bus stop, idly looking at my phone, I saw an unmissable change on the screen. I gave up on returning by bus and decided to do some last-minute shopping at a supermarket that was open at the year-end. Right after entering the store, I received a call from Susan. She was in a very high spirit and without any greeting, she blurted out something rude. "Thinking of feeding garbage to the family? I've disposed of that awful-looking meal you prepared. Hey, are you listening? I've dumped it all over the floor," she said unabashedly. All the food for 30 people, ruined. Just thinking about the cleanup made me sigh. It seemed Jake was right next to her, laughing loudly with his mother. "Hurry up and buy some meat. The best quality meat, you hear?" "Got it, Granny," Susan added, "and booze too. Snacks and sweets, buy all you can," she demanded. After their extravagant prank, they seemed very excited. When asked where I was, I told Susan the truth. "What? I'm out shopping right now? What? Oh, right. Good timing. That's right. I saw everything you did from the start." "Huh?" Susan seemed puzzled. She didn't catch on even when I mentioned I had been watching on my smartphone. I just told her I would explain when I got back and hung up. I also explained the situation to Dave over the phone. I wondered what would become of Susan and Jake after this. Just imagining it made me feel sick. The groceries I bought filled one bag and 2 plastic bags. A significant amount. As I was placing the bags at the entrance, I heard yelling from inside. It was rare, but Dave was raising his voice. I hadn't seen him this angry in years. "Enough is enough. What were you thinking doing something like this? Tell me." The shouting was so loud it made the sliding doors and windows shake. Even Susan, usually so bold, turned pale. Yet, there was still a sharp light in her eyes. In the middle of the room, surrounded by the scattered meal, she yelled, "How many times do I have to tell you? It wasn't me. It was already like this when I arrived." Lies, all lies. She has too many secrets. Defiant, Susan turned her face away from Dave, sulking. "If you don't want to believe me, fine. We can just buy another one, right?" Buy another one? The same meal? That's not a feasible option. I decided to enlighten her, ignorant as she was. This meal was made by Dave. He prepared it for all the relatives to enjoy. Susan was taken aback. Yes, Dave had been working hard on the cooking since early yesterday morning. I had been helping with the preparations the day before, supporting him in various ways. He had put his culinary skills to full use to create the meal for 30 people. I couldn't even begin to imagine the anger Dave felt having his efforts ruined. It was time to tell the whole truth. As I began clearing away the ruined meal, I suggested to Susan that she should come clean. What? What secrets? Can you not start with that nonsense all of a sudden? What about trying to extract $2,000 a month from me, among other things? Dave's gaze hardened further. It was like pouring fuel on the flames of his anger. Tell me everything, he demanded, and Susan fell silent. I took it upon myself to explain. Since Dave lost his income, Susan has been making me give her $1,000 a month. Dave looked deeply shocked. I was sorry about that. I'm sorry for keeping this from you until now, I added. I think it was wrong of me to have remained silent. I should have been honest with Dave from the beginning. Agreeing to Susan's demands in order to support my son's dream from behind the scenes was the initial mistake. Having my retirement funds taken away and just enduring it, when I think about it again, it's absurd. Susan's irrational behavior clouded my judgment. I told her it was impossible when she asked to increase the assistance to $2,000. Borrow money from relatives if I don't have enough. She even told me such a thing. The reason for the increase was supposedly Jake's tutoring fees. But when Dave heard that, he exploded again. Apparently, Jake wasn't attending any tutoring or lessons at all. Susan had been lying to extract money from me. That's absurd. I had arranged for the living expenses properly. There was no need for her to demand assistance. Where has the money gone? Tell me. Dave pressed. Facing no way out, Susan finally bowed her head. I haven't said anything, but I have debts. I've been using the money to pay them off. Susan had been gambling online without Dave's knowledge. She was in so deep that she had borrowed a significant amount from consumer credit services. I was appalled when I heard. My own money had been used to pay off my daughter-in-law's debts. How infuriating. I decided to reveal everything else I knew. There are more secrets, aren't there? Speak up. Like how you've been bad-mouthing me behind my back. Please stop! Susan, you and Jake have been calling me an old hag together, haven't you? Under Dave's glare, Jake, sitting in a corner, shrank back. I expected them to deny it vehemently, but this time they did not. Perhaps they realized that lame excuses would only make things worse. Good. I decided it was time to let Dave understand all the pain I had been feeling. Jake has been especially terrible. Old hag, give me meat, or give me money. Jake turned even paler. I had no intention of sparing my grandson. Even I, as tolerant as I am, was upset by being called an old hag. I had been made to feel bad and sad for so long. And now, this debacle. Even if they told me to stop, I couldn't. Did Jake think he could save himself by blaming his mother? It's Mom's fault. She called you an old hag, so I thought it was okay for me to say it too. Jake. Stop it. You don't need to say anything more. But Jake's betrayal did not end there. It appeared he knew exactly what his mother had been spending her money on. Under Dave's interrogation, he began to spill one secret after another. Mom has been secretly going to adult places. Places with men. Jake. Stop it. You know what's going to happen, right? Susan had been secretly visiting nightclubs without Dave's knowledge. Moreover, she had even given hush money to her son who had accidentally found out. Jake claimed he received $200 every month as hush money, which was utterly outrageous. How far would this dreadful mother and son go beyond my imagination? Susan's trips to the nightclub were her special treat on the days Dave came home late. Giving money to a grade schooler and neglecting him while she drank. It is beyond normal behavior. And Jake was no better. When asked how he used his allowance, he made a shocking confession. He had been paying his classmates to do his tasks. It seems he was paying his classmates to do his homework and cleaning, setting the price at $2 or $4 per task. The reason Jake had such influence at school was, essentially, because of the excessive allowance he received. What do you think school and your classmates are for? Know some shame, for heaven's sake. Dave's fury was understandable. What parent wouldn't be enraged to learn their child was engaged in such deceitful acts? Reprimanded by his father, Jake collapsed and started crying. It was so miserable. Even Susan, usually so bold, was reduced to tears this time. Yet, despite better judgment, she tried to defend her position until the very end. She insisted that she and Jake were not responsible for the ruined meal. It was already ruined when we got here. It must have been that cat, always around. It must have knocked it off the table. Please believe me. What are you even talking about? You called me yourself. Do you remember how terrible the things you said were? Planning on feeding your family trash, wasn't that it? No, it's not what you think. It was meant to be just a little joke. I was in no mood for excuses. I showed Susan the screen of my smartphone. It was displaying a video. What was shown was the very room we were in at that moment. It showed our room from a corner, capturing everything. There was Susan and Jake, laughing as they knocked down the meal, all captured by the camera. Of course, including their derogatory comments. Dave looked up at the ceiling in disbelief as he heard Susan and Jake's insults. What do you think you're doing with the food? And to talk like that to Mom, it's too much, even for you. Why? Is this a hidden camera? How is there a video like this? It's a pet surveillance camera. They're installed all over the house. Every time the eldest son and his wife came home for a visit, our pet cat Max would hide away. To know where he was and what he was doing, I had installed a surveillance camera. While I was out, I happened to view the footage and saw Susan and Jake appear on camera. I was shocked beyond belief to see them start knocking over the meal. After that, I immediately went grocery shopping to allow Dave to prepare a new meal. Then, after receiving a call full of Susan's insults. The thing is, our Max is too well behaved to ever do such terrible things. Blaming a speechless cat for your own actions, Susan, that's really the lowest of the low. Susan, now silent and crestfallen. I suppose she likely thought it would be a fun prank when they arrived at an empty house. As they started, probably the thrill got to them, and they ended up ruining everything. Harassing me by disrespecting food along with her child. You often hear about a difficult daughter-in-law, but ours is quite something. She might even fall into the worst category. Susan was obviously shocked that there was video evidence. She quieted down. She started to apologize, but her excuses were all self-serving, blaming her stress and other factors. I didn't want to hear it, so I told her to help Jake clean up the mess. There was still some time before the relatives arrived. And I had bought as many ingredients as I could. I suggested we head to the kitchen, and Dave followed with a nod. Preparing them takes considerable time. Some ingredients need to be prepared 3 days in advance. Given our time constraints, we decided to opt for quicker, simpler dishes instead of the elaborate traditional fare. We can make mashed potato, radish salad, and perhaps some omelets. Yeah, I'll try making some special dishes with the other ingredients. I stood in the kitchen with my son, Dave. It was clear he had been attending culinary school. I was impressed by Dave's efficiency and organization. It reminded me of the old days when I used to stand in the kitchen with my late husband. Dave's culinary skills were significant, as he intended to open his own restaurant. I was confident that the restaurant he would eventually open was bound to be successful. I held this conviction firmly. Meanwhile, Susan and Jake were tidying up. I wondered what Susan thought as she watched the efficient teamwork between Dave and me. It would be good if she could reflect on her outrageous actions and feel ashamed of her own irrelevance. Eventually, the relatives began to arrive in dribs and drabs. My husband's siblings and their families, our second son and his wife and kids, and our daughter and her family. Including us, there were 30 people in total. Making it bustling, as usual. The relatives all quickly noticed that the seats were dirty. They also noticed that the meal, which is usually plentiful, was somewhat scarce this year. When asked about it, I spilled the beans about Susan's wrongdoing. Susan and Jake ruined it. I really don't know what they were thinking. Showing them the video on my smartphone, the relatives were unanimously appalled. All gave Susan disapproving looks. I am so sorry. Why don't you explain to everyone why you did this? Well, that's because you hated me so much, didn't you? That's why you wanted to harass me, right? You can be honest now, it's okay. I'm sorry, really, I am truly sorry. Susan bowed her head, uncomfortable and remorseful. After that, she repeated her apologies several times. It was a pitiful sight. As for Jake, he was ostracized among the children of the relatives and was on the verge of tears. Children can be cruel sometimes. When it comes to punishing the guilty, they show no mercy. During the gathering, Susan and Jake were isolated in the corner, not even acknowledged by Dave. In mid-February, Dave and Susan divorced. It came out that she had been having an affair with her boss. It seemed to have been going on for a long time, and the boss's wife had multiple pieces of evidence. Following discussions with lawyers, the affair was exposed with irrefutable evidence. Apparently, Susan lined up various excuses, claiming she was led astray or felt lonely. But Susan received no sympathy from Dave. I think it's because her words are not worth listening to. If I were in his shoes, I would have rejected her just the same. I don't want to deal with her. As a result, she took Jake and started a new life elsewhere. Susan once called me, begging to mediate between her and Dave. Please, I'm begging you. Help me and Jake. Dave won't even answer my calls. This is too much. Please. You brought this upon yourself by doing unforgivable things. Saying this is too much is rather bold of you. Don't you feel any shame at all? It's futile for a rude, sarcastic, shameless woman who has cheated to suddenly pretend to be meek and humble now. I dismissed her, ending the call and blocking her number. A year has passed since the divorce. Susan still occasionally calls or emails Dave, I've heard. The content is always the same. Expressions of regret for her actions and words expressing a desire to start over. Of course, there are also requests for money. Often, she uses Jake as a ploy to garner sympathy. Please! Not for me, but help Jake. He's become an outcast at school, he has nowhere to fit in. He used to be so popular. Indeed. Jake was popular. But that popularity was bought with excessive allowance. As it turns out, in the world of children, the end of money marks the end of friendships, just the same as in the adult world. Burdened with debt and facing severe financial constraints, Susan no longer has the means to give Jake an allowance. It's not entirely wrong to say that Jake's downfall is partly due to Susan's actions. Dave knows this and has hardened his heart to encourage reflection, providing no assistance to them. Currently, Susan is working 2 jobs. As a cleaner and as a part-time employee at a store. She is also engaging in some home-based work, as told by Dave. She has to work tirelessly just to make ends meet, facing a harsh reality where even sleep seems a luxury. As Jake grows older, his needs will increase. But Susan lacks the resources to meet them. Jake might end up having to work right after middle school, due to his mother's failures. How will he feel about falling into such a situation? He will probably resent his mother, the one who caused all this. After all, he has inherited Susan's volatile temper. In the future, Jake may become unruly, worsening his relationship with his mother, his surroundings, and society. He might join bad company, causing even more trouble for his mother and those close to him. When things turn out that way, Susan might think again, realizing the folly of her actions. What a foolish thing I have done. If only I had left the meal alone. Eventually, she may find herself unable to love her wayward son, leading to an even greater breakdown of the family. Such a painful and regrettable future is easy to imagine. Of course, it would be the result of her own making. 2 years after the divorce, Dave successfully opened his own restaurant. I am now living by assisting him as one of his employees. Running a restaurant is challenging. It's expected that the food is delicious, but what comes after that is crucial. To make the business profitable, it's necessary to utilize social media, develop the staff, and expand the customer base. Fortunately, Dave inherits determination and reputation from his late father. The restaurant, once a diner closed after my husband passed, has been revived by Dave and is thriving. Such rumors have sparked more rumors, and thankfully, the restaurant is bustling with business. We're kept busy every day. I hope we can continue to increase our sales smoothly and bring peace of mind to my late husband in heaven. I often wonder if Dave could have focused on the restaurant if he had remained married to Susan. Probably not. Her negativity and aggression would have worn him down. In that sense, the divorce might have been a blessing in disguise. I owe a strange debt of gratitude to the ruined meal that led to these changes. I plan to support Dave's business as long as I am able to. Not as a showpiece, but with all the dedication I can muster, welcoming every customer with the brightest smile I can give.
Wait, it's really no good.
Despite my husband's attempt to quickly stand up and stop me, the side dish unexpectedly came to the rescue. With a swift motion, my husband extended his right leg and accidentally stepped on the side dishes, slamming his body onto the floor.
Ouch!
Ignoring my groaning husband, I energetically opened the door. Surprise! Well, I already knew. When I saw off the paramedics, I noticed some unfamiliar woman's shoes placed at the entrance. You see, my name is Eleanor, and I work as a manager in a company. I have lived a life solely focused on work until now, but I got married 6 months ago and now live with my husband, Owen. My husband and I are 5 years apart, and I'm the older wife. Our paths crossed 8 years ago. He came to my workplace as a salesperson for a job magazine, eager to make a sales pitch. I still vividly remember that moment. As a recent graduate, he had a nervous expression on his face as he dived into the sales pitch. My husband, who had recently become independent from his senior colleagues, was unsure of whom to approach and appeared flustered at the reception desk. And it happened that I was coincidentally there. I returned from a slightly late lunch to find my husband at the reception desk. "Is there something I can help you with?" Unable to get a response from him at the reception desk and sensing his suspicious behavior, I approached him.
I came about the job magazine.
Oh, I see. Did your contact person change?
Huh?
My husband looked bewildered. Being a newcomer, he was eager to knock on the doors of this company. However, job magazine contracts are usually handled by the headquarters of major companies. Unaware of this, he was determined to secure a major contract. Unfortunately, he ended up coming to the company where I work, which is a subcontractor. When I explained this to him, his face turned beet red.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. I believe that kind of enthusiasm is really important in your work, you know. Good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
At that moment, I found my husband so fresh and adorable, or so I thought. But there was no romantic feelings involved. I simply thought he was cute as a newcomer. So I completely forgot about this exchange at the time. Fate is an unpredictable thing. It honestly slipped my mind how much time had passed since then, but my husband and I unexpectedly ran into each other at a store near the company. Yes, I had forgotten about the interaction with my husband at that time.
I appreciate your help back then.
Huh?
At your company's reception.
Oh, right. How have things been since then?
Yes, there are still many difficult things, but I'm somehow managing and doing my best.
We engaged in casual conversation and then headed home, but we continued to run into each other several times at that convenience store. We exchanged contact information, and I was probably the first one to become aware of each other as potential romantic interests. I really wanted to support him in his clumsy but hard work. However, what still concerned me was the fact that he was 5 years younger. Although I had feelings for him, I couldn't clearly express those feelings. It was at that moment when he asked me to be in a relationship, and I gladly accepted without any hesitation. Since then, we have been dating for a long time, and it has brought us to the present. I felt happy to have been able to marry the person I loved so much. However, 4 months after our marriage, he decided to quit the job he had been working so hard in as a salesperson for the job magazine. Of course, he consulted with me before making the decision to resign.
No matter how hard you work as a subcontractor, you can never see a clear future.
While he works as a salesperson for the job magazine, he is not an employee of the company that publishes the magazine. He is actually an employee of a company approved to conduct businesses as a subcontractor for the major company. I knew from the beginning of our relationship that he was a subcontractor. However, it was after we got married that he started expressing these concerns.
In that aspect, Eleanor, you're in a better position. You have a stable job as a proper employee.
I find myself at a loss for words during moments like these. He's a full-time employee of the company, and I'm sure he's in no different position than I am.
Since the change in department heads, I'm really struggling. The quotas have become more demanding, and lately, I haven't been able to meet them. I'm constantly getting scolded by the department head.
I see. What if you try a different approach?
That's what the department head also mentioned. So you're still a manager, Eleanor. Did you forget how it feels to be in a lower position?
In the end, no matter what I say, it doesn't seem to reach my husband, who has fallen into a negative mindset. Lately, my husband has been like this all the time. Honestly, I was tired of this atmosphere.
I want to quit my job.
I couldn't affirm or deny those words. I thought that if it meant being liberated from this negative period, it might be worth considering and accepting.
From now on, I'm thinking of being a full-time house husband. Eleanor, you enjoy your job, don't you? I'll put more effort into taking care of the household tasks in return.
However, there were some words he said that I found hard to understand. Can someone who has never really done household chores suddenly be able to handle them? It seemed like he was underestimating the work involved in managing the household. Certainly, there is a difference between working outside the home and taking care of the household. But managing the household encompasses providing food, clothing, and shelter, and it's a demanding job. I honestly struggle with household chores, and I have deep respect for those who can smoothly handle them. I wonder if he can handle all of that. It's a significant doubt. Household chores. Have you ever done them before? Oh, and you were living with your parents until you married me, right? Besides, even after we got married, I was the one doing the household chores, right?
I don't mind. It's just household chores.
Just household chores? Those words really bothered me. Just? It's not something that simple.
It's okay. Being a full-time house husband is just the right kind of job for me.
I can't help but feel that my husband's remarks are belittling the role of a house husband. It didn't sit well with me. We owe our ability to live our lives to this point to the foundation provided by our parents. In my family, specifically, my father worked outside the home to earn a living while my mother took care of the household. It was the collaboration of my parents that made me who I am today. Both are important jobs that must not be lacking. My husband seemed as if he didn't get that.
Eleanor, you think I can't do it, don't you?
That's not true at all. I was just a little unsure. You know, I've never seen you doing household tasks before.
We won't know until we try, right? Are you already doubting me before I even start?
It's not exactly like that. However, I've seen many junior colleagues at work over the years. Most new employees are full of enthusiasm, but as they get more accustomed to their work, some of them start cutting corners. But they lack experience. That's why they sometimes overlook the areas where corners can be cut, which can lead to significant mistakes. and they all have something in common. At first, they are all eager and say, "I'll do my best." "You won't know until you try," is their emotional appeal. I see my husband doing the same thing right in front of me. I can't help but have a bad feeling about it. But this is not a workplace, it's our home. Since it's our family, I wanted to believe in his motivation. So I agreed to my husband resigning from his job under the condition that he takes care of the household. For the past week, my husband has been working hard, despite being unfamiliar with it. I can see a bit of dust in the corners, but I won't point it out. Since he's making an effort, I believe it's the time to encourage and support him. In the midst of all this, my husband mentioned wanting to attend cooking classes.
I want to improve my cooking skills and treat you to delicious meals, Eleanor.
Thank you. Do your best. I agreed without hesitation. I was happy to see his enthusiasm. I believe that this expense should be spent without hesitation. However, after attending cooking classes for 3 weeks, he started expressing complaints. Even when I come home tired from work, all that's prepared on the table is convenience store lunches. Hey, what have you been doing during the day? I couldn't stay silent anymore after a week of continuous convenience store meals.
I've been studying cooking.
I don't see any results though.
I'm tired, so there's nothing I can do about it.
I understand. Working can be tiring sometimes. Are you tired for a whole week? If it were just a few days, it would be understandable, but this seems like a complete mess.
You don't understand anything, Eleanor. You have no idea how difficult household chores are.
I do understand. That's why I've been expressing my gratitude all along.
But it's actually me who's doing it. You're all talk, Eleanor.
I felt incredibly angry. What was the point of that discussion we had? Well then, don't do the housework anymore.
Huh?
Owen's eyes are sparkling with excitement. He really reminds me of those juniors at the company who only talk big.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because you can't do it, right?
I guess it's not for me. Trying it out made me realize that.
Oh well, in that case, I'll take care of the housework. You should focus on finding a job.
Huh? Why?
Why? I should be the one asking that question. How can you ask why in this situation? You abandoned the housework, so you're unemployed, right? I don't intend to support an unemployed person. Please find a job and make good use of your time. Owen fell silent for a while and then looked at me with wide eyes.
Let's have a child.
Huh?
I'll take care of the child.
Oh, really? Do you even like children? By the way, do you have any qualifications related to education?
No, I don't.
Oh, I see. Well, even without qualifications, you can still work. If you want to, you can try looking for a job.
No, not like that. It's about raising a child. It'll be our child, you know?
What?
Let's have a child. Then it won't be a problem if I stay at home, right?
My affection for him, which had barely held on, was shattered by his words. This person, it's impossible. Let's get a divorce.
What? Why?
Why did you marry me in the first place? Before marrying me, you were working, putting in so much effort. And yet, right after we got married, you quit your job and said you would do the household chores. I accepted that and have been watching over you, but it didn't last. If being married to me is moving you in a negative direction, that's not a good thing. Besides, I want you to keep your promises. I've been supporting you in my own way all this time. But I'm not a saint. I don't intend to support someone who's fully dependent on me. His expression changed drastically.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I won't rely on you anymore. I'll take care of the household chores properly. Please, don't leave me.
Seeing my husband crying in front of me, my resolve remained unchanged. Even though he was sobbing, I knew that no real solution would come from comforting him now. So I suggested that we have a proper discussion at a later time. I actually wanted to have the discussion right away, but I had a business trip the next day and didn't have the time for a meaningful conversation. Although I felt reluctant to leave, I finished preparing for the business trip. The next morning when I woke up, breakfast was prepared. My husband kept apologizing, saying,
"I'm sorry," multiple times.
"Thank you for breakfast, it's delicious."
"Yeah, I'm glad. When will you be back?"
"Maybe in 3 days."
"I see. I'll take care of things at home properly. Take care on your business trip, okay?"
"Yeah, thank you." In front of me is a husband who seems completely heartbroken. It would be a lie to say that my heart is not swayed by his appearance. However, no matter how complicated my personal life may be, I won't let it affect my work. I mentally switched gears and headed to my business trip. I had planned to have meetings spread out over 3 days, but one of the client's representatives fell ill, so the meetings were canceled on the second day. I ended up coming back home 1 day early. I thought about contacting my husband to let him know about the change in plans, but considering the tension between us, I decided to just inform him that this schedule had changed. I was worried that it would further unsettle him. With that in mind, I purchased a ready-made meal and returned home. "I'm back." There was no response when I called out at the entrance. The house was completely dark. Maybe he's not home. I walked towards the living room without turning on the lights, and as I opened the door to the living room, there was a loud noise. What? I quickly turned on the lights to find my husband wearing only his underwear collapsed on the floor. "Hey, Owen?" It was my first experience of feeling completely blank in my mind. I hurriedly approached the living room. What should I do? An ambulance! I quickly called an ambulance. While waiting for them to arrive, I kept calling my husband's name desperately, but he remained unconscious. Afterwards, the paramedics arrived and tried to communicate with my husband, but there was no response.
"Please accompany us."
Understood. I was in a state of panic. "Oh, I dropped a few side dishes there. Please be careful." I called out to the paramedics to prevent them from slipping on the side dishes I accidentally dropped in a moment of panic, but the scattered side dishes were also at my feet. As I stepped on them and lost my balance, the phone I was holding flew into the air and fell forcefully towards my husband.
Ugh.
Did I just hear a voice? I unintentionally made eye contact with one of the paramedics. I gently peered into my husband's face and realized something. Perhaps the paramedics are thinking the same thing. I apologize.
Huh? Oh.
You can go home now, it's fine.
Ah, I see.
Yes, I'm truly sorry for causing a disturbance.
Oh, no worries. Well then, we'll take our leave.
They lowered my husband from the stretcher and left the house. I saw them off to the front door. Then something caught my eye. I truly felt sorry. I apologized to the paramedics as well, but if there were people who truly needed them while they were tending to my husband, then what my husband did would be a grave offense. I couldn't forgive it from the bottom of my heart. My husband, wearing nothing but his underwear, was lying on the floor. The season was approaching winter. Surely it must be very cold like this. Wake up quickly. Why did you do such a thing? There was no response from my husband. Hello, Mr. Feigned Illness?
Achoo!
You don't sneeze when you're unconscious, right? Wake up already. He seems to have quite the resilience. Ah, that's right. I should dress you in clothes, or you'll be cold. Let me bring some clothes. As I tried to get up and head to my husband's room, something wrapped around my leg.
No!
My husband was desperately grabbing on to my leg. Oh, is the fainting act over?
Absolutely not, because it's no good.
What is it?
Don't come into my room.
Why not?
Sir, it's a surprise. I'm preparing a lot of things for you, Eleanor, when you come back tomorrow. Don't look.
Then it's a surprise for now.
Wait, it's really not allowed.
As my husband hurriedly got up and tried to stop me, the side dishes came in handy. With a swift motion, my husband extended his right leg and accidentally stepped on the side dishes, slamming his body onto the floor.
Ouch.
Ignoring my writhing husband, I forcefully opened the door. Surprise! I already knew. When I saw off the paramedics, there were unfamiliar women's shoes placed at the entrance. Are you my husband's affair partner?
It's not an affair. We're serious, but...
Oh, even though you're serious, you were instructed to hide, right?
It's to keep me from getting involved.
Is that so? You're careless.
No, she's my sister.
Oh, weren't you an only child? Don't tell such obvious lies. Hey, affair partner, do you want to marry him?
Of course. There's no one else as kind as him.
Oh, I see. That's what you say. Well then, I'll grant you a divorce.
Huh? Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Wait a minute. I don't want to divorce you, Eleanor.
Wait, Owen? Didn't you say that you wanted to divorce but your wife wouldn't let you? Wasn't that what you said? Isn't it contradictory?
Hold on. Just shut up already. You're obviously just a fling for me. I like older women who have their own income. You can't support an easy life like mine. Seriously, just shut up, you idiot.
How cruel! You deceived me.
It's the foolish one who gets deceived.
She is sobbing. Well, there's no room for sympathy, though. That's right, it's the foolish one who gets deceived.
Eleanor, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry about this time. I was lonely and ended up playing around, but you are my true love, Eleanor.
No, I'm also one of those who got deceived by you. So you wanted to marry a financially stable older woman to have an easy life, didn't you?
Huh? Did I say something like that?
Oh no. Don't you remember the insults you hurled at your affair partner? You said them right in front of me. I have also woken up. I will divorce you. Of course, as you are the one at fault, I will seek compensation from you. I don't need someone in my life who pretends to faint to cover up their own affair. There is nothing left to hesitate about.
Wait a minute. If you're gone, how am I supposed to go on living?
Work.
Huh?
Work and take care of yourself on your own.
Wait.
We have nothing more to talk about. We'll involve lawyers from now on. My husband stubbornly refused to leave, but when I contacted my in-laws, they took him away. I later claimed damages from the tearful mistress who left in a hurry. I expected to be met with resistance, but surprisingly she immediately transferred the compensation. She returned to our house with her parents, bowing and apologizing on all fours. Well, she must have believed my husband's lies. Cheating is not commendable, but thanks to her, I'm grateful for having an advantageous position in the divorce proceedings with my husband. If she truly reflects on this matter, I hope she learns from it in the future. About a month after that incident, I divorced my husband. He stubbornly resisted until the end, but my father-in-law silenced him under a reign of fear. He was a foolish man who committed infidelity, but my in-laws are very sincere people. They also managed to defeat him when he greedily demanded a share of the assets. Well, considering we were married for a short time, the issue of asset division doesn't really matter much. It's really insignificant in the grand scheme of things. In the end, my ex-husband handed over $3,000 from his savings as compensation, and we reached a settlement. Afterwards, I heard that he, being unemployed, is assisting my former father-in-law with his occupation as a fisherman. With zero savings and no financial freedom, he is living under the surveillance of my parents-in-law, or so I've heard. Given that, my former father-in-law was determined to instill discipline and had a strong will. I imagine my ex-husband is being treated quite harshly. Meanwhile, I have become somewhat distant from love due to this incident. However, it's frustrating that it's because of him that I ended up like this. If there is another chance someday, I want to seize it without hesitation. After all, life is still long.